Okay, thank you for everybody coming tonight. This is I'm called it an office hours when we promoted it, but obviously we're going to talk. There's going to be a lot of issues I would imagine about the shooting in Oxford, but just so you know, so I'm the state representative of the 46th district. I know there's some new faces here. That means I represent approximately 90,000 people, which would be the majority of Oakland Township, Orion Township, Addison Township, Brandon Township, and Oxford Township. I do hold office hours up until COVID. They were like every month on a regular. But then once COVID hit, it kind of grouped everything up because I typically have office hours at the libraries, and we were able to hold them then. And so sporadically I've had them. And I think this will probably kick off getting more on track and having regular office hours. This is my third term I'm in. I just want to say that for those of you who are not familiar with me, I do put out there on my Facebook page, which is Rep. John Reilly, or my website, every vote that I take, I explain, I give a vote explanation. There are 110 House representatives. As far as I know, there's 2 of us that do that. So that's to kind of let you know who I am, how I vote, and just to try to be as transparent as possible. So I think the format, I wasn't sure what to expect, how many people were going to be here, what was going to go on here. So I thought I would start out with basically hearing from people's concerns. I mean, I'm here to listen. I'm here with one of my staff members, Ryan, who will kind of take down any information, like if we have to get back with anybody, if I can't answer questions or whatever, or for whatever reason I want to do some follow-up. I'm here to hear what people have to say about this incident predominantly, but also if there's other topics that you want to talk about, you can bring those up too. If there's with this many people, I think that we're probably going to be able to hear everybody out. I was going to try to listen to what people had to say. I listen to what the questions are, kind of do a broad answering of the questions, and then with this many people, I think I can come back and answer specific questions if I didn't answer your questions, if you had a question you wanted to answer more thoroughly. So that'll just kind of kick it off. Thank you for the press for being here. Thank you for Oakland Ministries, who is here, who has let us use this building. And we very much appreciate that, especially during the times when we had COVID going. The rules, they allowed us to use this facility for different things. I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you. Obviously, we don't have words to say on the shooting, and I would just say that I think it's an opportunity for the community to come together. We are sorely missing that in our world today, where people know what's going on in their community, we know what's going on in every area. I know there's certain people that watch what's going on in the schools, but we need more people watching what's going on in government at every level, being aware of what's going on at every level. So that's the way I feel about that. Obviously, we're all torn about this. Whenever, especially a child is lost, it's a traumatic experience for those parents and everybody who knew that child. It's not like somebody who's older, and the amount of people that are affected, this is huge. So I understand that, and with that, I'll just say I'm open to start answering any questions, or I guess hearing from what anybody has to say who is here. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Representative Reilly.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I guess as good as anybody in this community can be right now. My son goes to Oxford High School, and I consider us to be fortunate as much as anybody in this community can be fortunate right now. This was a traumatic event for our entire community, and in fact, the surrounding communities, our state, our country, the world, really, in my opinion. I have a couple of questions for you. One that I have, and another from a teacher that was in the school on that day, who asked me to ask you a question because she emotionally cannot even really leave her house right now because she's so traumatized. Number one, my question is, do you believe that children should have unfettered access to their parents' weapons.
Oh, so, okay, well, just write that down. I'll come back to address that. What's the other question?
Okay, that's really not a difficult question in my opinion. It's simply yes or no.
Well, I got to kind of get my thoughts together.
Okay.
And I kind of, at the format, so I was going to kind of come back and answer the question. And then we'll have an opportunity to go back and forth.
This child was able to access his parents' weapon right out of their dresser drawer. So that was my first question. And then do you support common sense, you know, like gun measures like safe storage of weapons?
Okay, all right. So those two questions, we'll come back and visit those. And so those are obviously the questions you have. Is anybody else who?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering what's being done on a organized level for the mental health care of these victims. I'm seeing a handful of volunteers showing up sporadically, doing what they can do as volunteers. There's nothing that I am aware of that's being done to help these families. Can you tell me
Well, I don't understand your question.
Can you tell me what your office is doing to help address the mental health needs that this trauma has created for these families?
Okay, what our office is doing to address the mental health needs. Okay, all right.
What you are helping to create for them.
Okay, all right. We'll come back to that. Here again, I just want to try to get input, like if anybody has any thoughts out there, not just questions, but I'm open to questions, then I'll make some general statements, and then I'll address specifics so I don't cover. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but can I share something with you as a retired teacher with mental health? It takes a very long time to understand what's going through a child's mind. The teachers are so overwhelmed. We don't have enough counselors nationwide. On the average, we have about one counselor per 450 students. The students today, what they're dealing with, because of COVID, the depression and the mental health issues have increased over 24%. And we are so focused on COVID, but we're not concerned what COVID has done to our young people. The social media as a teacher and seeing what has happened after 2000, I would say about 2012, social media has really taken a toll on these young people. And when you combine that with bad parenting and not fully understanding how you have to lock up your guns, we cannot blame our administrators, nor our school, nor our teachers, nor our counselors. And Satan is alive. And we need to bring these children back. They are exposed to so much pornography and violent acts on the internet and the websites that is unbelievable. And I share this with you because we can't be pointing fingers right now and blaming each other.
I was speaking to what's available to service the families in trauma at the moment, not the students and not what led up to this. I'm talking about now.
All right, but
What's
you know what?
helping
The
the
COVID
families
money
now.
that each state has received can be used to hire more counselors.
But shootings were happening before COVID. COVID is a symptom of what's going on, not the problem.
Okay, she made a statement. Let's just kind of, you done with your statement? Sure. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Yeah.
Yeah. What would it take to get maybe the answer's here, the money to put in metal detectors in schools?
Okay. I don't know if you were here when I said I'm going to come back and address the questions afterwards, like as a whole. But anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Is it true that you just voted against a measure after the school shooting that would have provided $50 million to schools for added protection measures and safety measures?
Okay, you got that one.
It's a yes or no question.
No, I'm going to come back and address all these, and I will. Just have patience. Yeah, go ahead.
My problem that I've had with you since a year ago when you stopped by my house to ask me to vote for you is that I have continually gotten responses of "I will get back to you." It has now been a year, and I have yet to have you get back to me. I live on Parkland Road in Lake Orion. I am one of your constituents. I have asked you to call me, and I have not gotten a call back. I have called your office, and you have not answered the phone. You've had someone else call me back and say, "I'll get back to you." We've had enough of "I will get back to you." You either answer questions or you get voted out.
Okay.
I've had enough.
If you want to give your name to Ryan, we will talk.
You'll
we can
get
talk
back to
right
me.
afterwards.
I get it.
John's here every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
And I tell him every
Come here
time.
and talk to him every
Okay,
Thursday.
Okay, I'll come. I'll be here every
hold
Thursday.
on. We don't want to get back and forth among people.
What's your
At
question? I
this
guess
point.
he can write down your question.
So,
What was your question?
He's had my question for
Well, can
many
you give it to him
times.
so you can write it down and answer it tonight?
My question is, we've gone over this with budgeting before, and you voted no on budgeting.
okay.
Two days after the shooting, you voted no. I want to know why.
Well, I will
Just
address
like
that.
everybody else here does.
I will address that. Okay. Specifically, I'll address that. Okay, yeah.
Good question.
I have a statement. Bear with me because it is lengthy. Before I start, Ryan, I want to thank you for your time. You certainly know who I am. I've chatted with you several times, so appreciate the conversations that we've had. Oh, we will fight for Oxford High, and we have the strength to win, to do or die. This is the opening line of the Oxford High School fight song. What was surely a metaphorical representation of to do or die has now become entirely literal for the students of staff of Oxford High. Mr. Reilly, I know my time and words here tonight to you is a fool's errand, but I feel an obligation and a duty to my Oxford High School student who was fortunate to escape with her life. Why do I say that this is a profitless endeavor? Because your own voting record shows a clear and consistent record of failing to support any type of protections for our children. Here are some of your actions and your track record of failure to be part of any type of solution, and this is just in the last 40 days alone. On October 27th, you voted no on House Bills 4071 and 4072, which would enhance penalties for a first offense of second, third, or fourth degree child abuse in a licensed child care facility or home if the victim is defined as a vulnerable child due to a developmental or other disability. On November 9th, you were absent. You didn't even show up to vote on House Bill 4880, on a law that would expand reporting of suspected child abuse to physical therapists, physical therapy assistants, occupational therapists, and athletic trainers. And of course, 48 hours after this tragedy, after 4 children were murdered in Oxford High School, you voted against House Bill 4880, House Bill 5522. Included in that was an amendment from Representative Mr. Howell, just north of here, a fellow Republican, increasing funding for school resource officers to $50 million. This was to grant schools funding to support costs of school resource officers whose primary responsibility would to assist school administration to ensure the physical safety of school buildings and the people in them. Additionally, there was $10 million for mental health services due to COVID. Your actions in inaction is unconscionable. I'm not sure if you're just cruel or extremely limited in your intellectual capacity, but I would subscribe your actions show that you're both. Politicians like you will once again offer some hollow thoughts and prayers and then do nothing. How do I know this? Because I talked to a Parkland father for an hour last Thursday morning. You know what he said? We thought we'd be the last. But cowards like you will come up with endless excuses, and frankly, you have neither the emotional or intellectual capital required to tackle this complex issue.
You have to be rude.
So I ask of you, my question, tell us, how many dead children will it take for you to realize that we have a complex problem with both guns and mental health resources in our community, our state, and our country? And if you can't do that, step aside so those of us that are concerned with the safety and well-being of our beautiful children after birth can work to solve this problem. Because I will fight for Oxford High School, so no more children will have to do or die.
Thank you, school board. Okay, any other comments? Questions? Yeah.
I have a comment. First of all, I'm sorry that you feel that way about Representative Reilly. I think you were a little bit out of order, sir. I'm Phyllis Andrus. I was a public school educator for 37 years. I have a little different tact than my friend Marcy here. She taught in a rather affluent school district. I did not. I was very near the Detroit border. We had, in my 37 years, I worked with 3 children that eventually became murderers. The fact is, policies are being enacted in Washington, D.C., and were enacted in Washington, D.C. by the Obama administration and Attorney General Eric Holder and Secretary of Education Arne Duncan. That program was called the Promise. The Promise program is a program that is supposed to interrupt the schoolyard or school building to prison pipeline so that they can dissuade and correct behavior. That's the goal of these children that are, quite honestly, in my mind, evil. The fact is that it does not do that. What it does is put a Band-Aid approach on the disciplinary issues that are prevalent in every building in this state and this country. We had plenty of them in my district. I'm not so sure about the Birmingham district where Marcy worked. And it's not gotten any better since I retired 14 years ago. It's gotten worse. This book, this gentleman was speaking about Parkland. Marjorie Stoneman High School in Parkland, Florida, where 17 were murdered February 14, 2018. Andrew Pollock, the father of this beautiful child, Meadow, along with an educational expert, Max Eden, wrote this book. Every one of you should get a copy of this book and circulate it among your friends and those that are interested in the safety of children and people that work in buildings, in school buildings. This is a well-written book. It details every single episode that they had with Nicholas Cruz, the murder of those people. That's heinous crime that he committed that hideous day. Same issues in Oxford High School, I will be willing to bet you, happened. And that child, the Crumley child, was overlooked in certain aspects of his discipline. Instead of being booted out so that the other children there to learn could have learned and were safe, they kept him and Band-Aided the approach. It's not the way to do it. Personally, after those horrendous circumstances in Parkland and again here in our local area, it tears my heart as it does yours. It makes me sick to my stomach. My own daughter works in the building where I worked for those 37 years, and I worry for her every single day, as you do for your children and your loved ones here in this community. I urge you to read this book. It not only details those things that were done or not done in the case of Nicholas Cruz, but it also, at the end of the book, gives you Mr. Pollock and Max Eden's possible solutions to remedy the situation, to help keep our children safe. And that's all I have to say.
I'm a school teacher, retired, and I'm not from this area. I live here now. I want to know why we don't have laws, common gun laws, not to take away guns, but to put counselors in schools. Teachers have the first view of a child. I know when a kid's in trouble.
Sure.
Why can't I get a counselor to help me? I can't. And I was in an affluent school district. And I want to know why we don't have, in the state of Michigan, have a law that says you've got to lock up your guns.
Your first question, I just want to make sure it's clear. Why you want laws for had to do with counselors?
I think that we need more counseling or availability of counselors. When I had a child that's in trouble, and these two teachers knew that they had trouble.
Oh, yes.
And when they referred it to the school couldn't do anything. Why?
They generally do, quite honestly. I know from experience with my
Well,
daughter.
yeah, they do. They don't have the manpower.
But like Marcy said, 450 students to one counselor. They're dealing with lunchroom duty, they're dealing with bus duty, they're doing the administrative.
Why would we vote against funding?
Not right.
Yeah, we want to
All the funding is
do
there.
what we need to do.
Okay.
It's not there.
Dan, let's not get the back and forth going. Okay, you had a question back here, or a comment or something.
I don't care which party you're aligned with, and I don't care what you voted for in the past because I can't change it. So speculating on what happened in Oxford High School this past week doesn't matter because we don't have all the facts yet. So I want to know, despite everything that's been brought up tonight, what you're going to do moving forward, because all we can do is move forward. So when you sit down and you look over the questions that have been asked, I want an open discourse and dialogue, because we cannot change what did happen, but we can keep it from happening at Lake Orion. We can keep it from happening at Rochester, at Clarkson, at Brandon. So whatever you want to say about the Crumpleys or Oxford or whoever messed up, it's done. We have to move on, and Reilly, you are a part of that, and we need you to be on the side of our children. And that's all I have to say. I don't care about it. What we have to do is on.
I want to know why we don't have a safe gun law.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. So, like I said, my son has always went to Oxford schools, and I know that the staff, he has great support there, and I know they're doing the best that they can do to help our kids. This child was not a disciplinary problem. He didn't have a record of discipline. Oh, I'm not done. He didn't have a record of that. And you know, I know that right now the teachers, the counselors have a ton of things on their plate, and yes, they need more funding. And if we just got back to the root of the problem, what was the root of the problem? This child had access to his parents' weapons. This child was given a semi-automatic weapon for his Christmas present. That is the problem. Do you believe that children should have access to semi-automatic weapons, Representative Reilly? That's a very easy question to answer, right? You surely don't have to review that with Ryan to answer that
I'm not going to
question.
review it. I kind of said I'll address these issues. Okay.
One more thing I have, unless someone else. I want to speak from the teacher that I know that was there, that is familiar with the shooter. She wanted me to ask you to please give an answer on why you're not willing to do something about common sense gun reform. when your constituents have been killed.
Yes. Second that.
Okay, you had a question back here? Or comment? No, you got it. Yeah.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, what do you think could be done? I feel that it's a mental health issue, and I saw some things, which allegedly was his Instagram posts, which were extremely disturbing. And it seems like with these shooters that have different parts of the country, when it's occurred, they really do seem to have a lot of similarities. Yes. And I would just like to see something along the lines of, I don't know how to do it precisely, but I do think mental health being addressed at the school level would be a good idea.
I'm not going to talk about the Pittsburgh school shootings. It's horrendous, and I don't know enough about it. But I've been going to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners meetings for 6 months, and the Oakland County Board of Commissioners has spent $9 million on Afghan refugees. They have put in counseling and taken away our homeland security. They have broken every law. There has been hundreds of parents speaking at every meeting about the emotional effect of our kids.
County Sheriff's Department.
Excuse me, I'm talking. Parents have been begging the Oakland County Board and telling them about the emotional and psychological effect of this COVID lie, this lockdown, this masking.
No, absolutely not. My mother-in-law died last week and had 0 things wrong with her.
I'm sorry.
I watched her die.
Let her speak.
Absolutely not.
Okay, yeah, we have to let.
First of all, you need to stop the lie. Let her talk.
That was a lie.
You guys, everybody got a chance to talk.
Control your meeting.
You're
Why are you
talking
talking to us? You be talking to him. Talk to him, not us.
Okay.
Go ahead. That's all I had to say. If you don't stand up for your kids and your schools and
We're here to
county
stand up for
board,
our
they're the
kids.
ones that have the money.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are running your
Yes,
schools.
we're
They're the
here
ones
to
that are
stand up for our
mandating
kids.
the
It's a
schools.
government thing.
Okay,
It's federal government.
we have to be able to talk civilly.
To answer a question. Take one question, answer it.
Way. So I will come back and answer the questions here shortly.
There
Looks
is
like
no
we got
way.
most of the
We're
comments
ready.
out.
We're ready, go ahead.
Relax, people, come on, keep it
I'm
together.
done.
No, behind you.
If you understand statistics, this has been going on
I do.
for over 20 years. 71% or 72% of the guns involved in shooting, killing people, have been stolen. If you look at your CPL application, you will see that it has probably 100 questions, and they really check you out. The parents made a mistake in not locking up and securing that gun. What astounded me was how did this 15-year-old boy understand the different magazines and everything that went into it. And if you look back, I taught during Columbine. I taught during Sandy Hook. What they have in common is this fixation with these violent video games. The other thing I want to share with you, not just with affluent school districts or rural communities, pretty much statewide and maybe nationwide, typically you have one counselor for 450 students. I can share many stories with you where I have been in situations where I only had 25 minutes to eat lunch, look at my emails because of the way my schedule was, and trying to help a student in a hallway who was harming himself. And I had to run to look for the assistant principal, and then had to run to the cafeteria, went into the assistant principal because my classroom phone did not allow me to make long distance calls to a parent.
So we need more funding.
Of course, but we are in a nation that is facing such a deficit.
But voting against it doesn't help any of that, right?
But let me share something with you. I spent the afternoon speaking with my dear friend whose children attend Oxford High School and taught with me in Birmingham. These children are devastated.
Absolutely.
Devastated. And it doesn't help when the media wants to get involved. And it takes a long time. You may have family members, you may have relatives. If you've been in education, the long process of diagnosing mental health takes forever. So I share this with you so that you don't take it out against John Reilly, nor take it out against the superintendent or the teacher.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Why is it that you're backing a man that has voted against what you're looking for? You're looking for additional money, and all of the things that you just said, additional money, and this man voted against it. Why would you not?
This isn't a political rally,
John
folks.
Riley.
I said nothing about politics. I'm asking a man a question.
Shut up and quit interrupting her. Okay, hold on. Let's just stop it right here. Okay, I think I'll answer some of these questions so that, I'll give you a kind of an overview here of the way I look at this. And then we can come back and go back and forth. These are teachers. So to start off with, I ran on a platform of lower cost of living in Michigan, definitely less regulation, less government, more personal responsibility, and I value liberty highly. These are some of the things that I ran my platform on. I'm not a politician, I'm a representative. And the way you tell the difference is, what does somebody get when they get elected? Do they do what they say they were going to do when they ran? And basically, I'm not perfect, I know, but that's basically what I've stood for. I've been transparent. I've already mentioned out of all the representatives, 110, there's 2 of us that list all our votes and why we vote the way they do. Coming into this meeting, or realizing this meeting was going to be coming, I had this scheduled. I voted for a bill that's very controversial. I didn't change who I was. I stayed true to who I believe I am. Now, I'm trying to represent people, stick to the reasons why I ran on when I ran, and be true and be consistent with that. I'm not a politician. Politicians look to see which way the wind's blowing, where the popular opinion is, and they make decisions along that way. That's not me. So I'm not, there's a difference here, and that's one of the things you have to consider, that if you kind of get who I say I am. I'm pretty much straightforward. People have already admitted it. I continually vote down against things. And I'll just say, like on this budget that had to do with so if we look at the last supplemental budget we have, and the supplemental budget is a budget that's done after the year has started, and they said, okay, we need to have more money. And a big chunk of it was for law enforcement, including the officers at schools. So personally, I looked at, first off, I will say generally, I don't vote for supplementals. I think a lot of times, unless depending on what's in there, is convincing enough for me to vote yes on it. And that'd be true for most of the budgets I see. We've gone from a budget of $56 million when I started to $71 million this year. 56 billion to 71 billion. This is we've been spending money. There's no shortage of spending money in the state. But I knew this bill was coming up, and I knew this meeting was coming up with this bill, and I kind of thought about some of the things. One of them is, do the schools in my district have resource officers? Yeah, they do. They have them now. So there's a method where people can have resource officers now. These are choices that the community makes. And that falls into one of the other things that I'm very strong on, and that is subsidiarity. The more local you are, the more making decisions, the better. I'm not for national decisions. I got into this because of Common Core in schools. I have no desire for Washington to be making decisions about our schools. And so the more local you can keep decisions, the more I think that's the better route to go. So on this bill that wanted to give money for resource officers, which by the way was scheduled to be for $10 million for resource officers for schools went up to $50 million. All of a sudden, it was like, we came in, it was 10 million, and now it's 50 million. Why is that? Okay, so I think that if it was 10 million one day, why is it $50 million the next day? I'm trying to be consistent, and I think that that reflects something that I wasn't convinced that we should be doing. So that addresses that bill right there. A couple of the other things that came up.
You have a woman who has a question direct to what you just said.
Isn't it his turn to speak, though? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me continue. We can kind of come back. There's a lot of issues here. We can come back to this, and I will call on you. So overall, my general thought is, in this situation, there was a lot of laws that were broken. And I'm not a person who necessarily wants to make more laws. I'm not opposed to making more laws. But you have to see what exactly are, especially around gun control. That's a big issue. I don't necessarily think the issue is the laws that we have. It was mentioned, should they be available for somebody in the house? Should you allow your guns to be in the house and anybody can get at them, whatever age group? And obviously, I have grandchildren. I have, and I don't want to leave my guns laying around for them to get to them. I think it's sensible for a parent or a grandparent to put those away. But honestly, once you're in the home, it's pretty hard to enforce those laws. And that would be an unenforceable law to try to demand that you have to, are you going to have the ability for police officers to come in? I don't think so. That's not going to be something that they're going to be able to do.
No, it holds them accountable.
Okay, so let me just continue on here. And
so you're okay with unfettered access to guns?
That's not what he said. Basically speaking, I believe that we have plenty of laws, and plenty of laws were broken. And there's plenty of laws that the prosecutor's going to use here. So I'm not real quick to start throwing more laws at it. I want to look at all the other things. Some very good points were made up here, and I don't know the answers. I don't know how much COVID even affects people. Not being able to live out their life. I don't know how it affects kids when they're not able to wrestle on the playground anymore because in a younger age because they don't want to see that. All these things in our culture are changing. I don't know all the answers. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm willing to look into it. Okay. I forgot what the one thing, somebody mentioned that I didn't even show up to work to vote on something. I was sick recently. I did miss a few days. That was the first time in the 5 years that I've been there that I've missed anything. I've never missed a committee hearing I don't believe I've missed a committee hearing. If there was, maybe it's one. And I've never missed a session date previously also.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Somebody asked a question about, shall you allow a person to have a semi-automatic weapon? Was that
a child?
A child to have a semi-automatic? Well, define what a child is, I guess.
Anyone that's under the age of 18.
So a semi-automatic weapon covers a lot of weapons, and certainly that's totally lawful for somebody to be out hunting with a semi-automatic gun. A semi-automatic gun means every time you pull the trigger, the round fires. Certainly, there's many kids that go pheasant hunting and hunting with a gun and have done it for years. So I don't have a problem with that.
That's a good question. Would you hunt with the gun that was used in Oxford High School?
So let's see.
Nobody answers because
let me continue to answer the question.
Are you going to allow prescription drugs in the home too? Or require them to be locked up?
I'm going to hold you responsible for your own
life. We got to be able to talk here. Come on, this is part of the problem. As a community, we have to be able to discuss things. And this is the problem. This is the problem in government too. People don't want to discuss things. We have to be able to discuss things. Okay, Ryan, what are some of the ones that I missed here?
Do you support common sense gun laws?
Yeah, I would say I support common sense gun laws. Yes, I do. It depends on what they are, obviously. Go ahead. What's the next one?
And then related to, I think it's 5066, the law of locking up different weapons in the home. I think you did touch on that, but how did you feel?
Well, generally, I believe that you should lock up guns, but I do not think it's enforceable to make laws that require it. I know there was something about mental health.
Mental health.
And the mental health budget, I'd have to look at it, but I believe it's very substantial. I do know there's problems in mental health though, because I actually have some friends who talk to me regularly about this, and I do know that there's issues. And so I'm not opposed to looking at mental health, and I think, to be honest with you, I'm not opposed for the government to get more involved and possibly spend more money in that area. I do think the true solution is more at a community level, a local level, a church level. The churches and other community areas have to be pouring into this. It just can't be doling out money. That does not work. But I'm not opposed to possibly spending more on mental health or looking into that for sure. I know that there's issues. And every time you have the state involved, I know that there's going to be problems and issues that people fall through the cracks. What else do we have?
How do you feel about metal detectors in schools, and where do you see that?
Okay, so here again, this is a decision that a school district can make. I mean, we have a pretty good relationship with Oxford, talk a lot with them. They've never once said we would like to have metal detectors in the schools. I don't know, you know, what the cost is for that, and I don't know how effective that is in the policies that would be going forward. I don't know how that would, you know, work out. I definitely would be open to looking at that. I don't know. All I know is that Oxford has never really mentioned that to us previously about metal detectors.
How do you feel about, I think you mentioned, how do you feel about 5225?
Which is what?
That was the supplemental budget. I think you did touch on that.
Okay.
And then you mentioned the mental health questions. What is the House working on right now in caucus and in appropriations to look at a lot of these mental health issues?
Yeah, as far as what, I mean, obviously, this is going to be run up the flagpole, and there's lots of players that are involved in the House. We are going to be talking about this. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you have a whole committee set up for this already. They're well aware of it, and just so that you know, just like a side note, there are a lot of committees, and a representative, it's hard to be aware of all the things that are going on in all those committees and be an expert on everything. You can't just all of a sudden become an expert over, you know, and know all these different topics. So as far as the mental health goes, the budget, what's in there, what the major issues are, I don't know them all. So I just wanted to make that clear. Some of these fields are very technical. Energy, it's just like this is a very technical work, and so most representatives, they're honest with you, would have to say they don't know all the details of every committee and what they discuss and the issues that initiatives. So although when bills come up, it's obviously our job to read the bill and know the topics that are in there.
There was some discussion about how you've been absent from the district lately. Can you talk about that too?
I've not been, absent. I've not been absent from the district. I was at the vigil on Friday night in Oxford. I was at the one the night before, I think it was the night before, in Orion. Unfortunately, that was kind of a timing issue, but I got there a little bit late, but I was still there. And for whatever reason, nobody contacted me, although I contacted them if they want me to speak on the Friday night vigil, and nobody responded. So I take it as I didn't have any, they didn't want me to talk at all.
And a lot of the other questions were related to what is going to happen in the future, what is going on in caucus, what have you talked about with your colleagues?
Yeah, so this is a thing we have to process. It's going to take time. I mean, this is a time when you dwell, you take in information, you think about things. You don't make quick judgments and decisions, but you kind of weigh all these things out. This is a very, very complicated thing. Many laws have already been broken on this, and just making more laws is not going to necessarily solve that. Okay, so I'm trying to think of how we can do this now. Any questions that you felt were not answered thoroughly? I know we have one back here. Do you want to address this? No. Oh, you're over here? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question. Is you had mentioned earlier what the money was increased from 10 billion to 50 billion?
10 million to 50 million.
Did they give you an explanation? Did you find out an explanation why?
Yeah, it was because in light of what happened at Oxford.
That increase was in the last week?
That happened, I think it was the day that we were voting.
Which was?
Thursday.
Yeah, I think, was it Thursday or?
They went to a Probes caucus in the morning, and that's
so it was on Thursday.
So they wanted more, they realized that they need more help for that.
Or it was an emotional response?
It could be an emotional response, but I'll have to tell you this. As a teacher, all of us know that we're underpaid, overworked. And as a law enforcement, I do not understand why anybody would go into that kind of field for the pay that they're getting.
Yeah, I do admit, a police officer's job, you see the sheriff back here, is a very difficult one, especially how they're so scrutinized in everything that they do. They have the body cameras, they cannot make one false move. Things have changed a lot in the years, and I have compassion for the officers, and to see especially what they're going through, where people don't want them in their communities. It's ridiculous. But we do have a budget it's not like we don't support the police. I think that we do, and I think once again our budget is increasing quite a bit. I believe it was 55 billion when I started, 71 billion this year. Those are some big numbers to have an increase.
Now, if we could just get the county to fund our police departments.
Okay, so
That 40 million was for.
Okay, so I think
40 million for.
I think we have like round 2 of questions. Is that what everybody wants to do here?
I need the answer to my question.
Oh, I'm sorry, what is it?
What was that 40 million for?
It was for police officers in school. I hate to call them resource officers. Yeah.
More resource officers.
Right, and for communities who have decided not to implement them yet, I guess this would be something that they may take up on and use those dollars for that. Okay, we're calling some people haven't responded. Okay, way in the back on this side. Yeah. Yeah, you were there.
Okay. A couple of questions here that have been dealt with about the issue of what laws have been broken. The Oakland County Sheriff said there's at least 5 laws that have been broken here, 4 to 5, now in this situation. That just happened. Secondly, dealing with the issue of mental health. This is a serious problem that's been plaguing this entire country since the 1970s. When what the liberals wanted to do was to deinstitutionalize a lot of these homes where we would send people who had mental issues, and what they wanted to do was to put them in residential neighborhoods. I worked for a state representative and a state senator where we had to deal with this issue, where they were putting group homes with people with violent histories, violent past, in residential neighborhoods, according to a decision that was handed down by the Supreme Court that was instituted by none other than Bill Clinton. He took the city of Edmonds, Washington to court that we could not put any type of a group facility in a facility that was multifamily. We had to deinstitutionalize them, so we were going to put them in single-family residential neighborhoods. That was called the Edmonds, Washington decision. It had a severe impact on mental health all over this country, and the inability of putting people into institutions who belonged in institutions. But what they did was they put them in a residential neighborhood in St. Clair Shores that we represented, where these people were getting in fights and altercations and going into local homes, knocking on the doors of, hey, I need some smokes. You got any smokes? Hey, come on, get me in. They're knocking on the doors of residential neighborhoods. This is all because of a policy that was instituted by the Edmonds, Washington decision. And there was an article about this, Bill Clinton's attack on the neighborhoods. If more people understood what they did with that decision and how they started implementing it, you would be pissed about what's happening in your neighborhoods and the fact that we deinstitutionalize all these people. And we have people walking the streets right now who are talking to the sun, they're talking to the moon, whatever it might be, and we got no place to put them. Because we went on a rampage of deinstitutionalizing these places, so now we've got to go back to scratch once again and deal with people like this kid. So let's put the blame where it properly belongs. Let's look at the big picture.
Certainly not important about future.
Thank you. Okay, this woman right here with your hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to address the issue with what he was talking about. My grandma worked at Clinton Valley. That place was scary as heck.
I'll tell you, it was.
And I was a direct care worker for 10 years in those group homes he's talking about. We provided family-like treatment and care for these people. So he's painted a picture that's not even accurate. I worked 10 years with these folks, and I saw where they came from. And like she said, many of them landed on the streets. And that was under Governor Engler in this state. It was anywhere.
Okay. All right, this gentleman in the last seat over here. Yeah.
I'm hoping that this relates and maybe is helpful. But if you look at this as one team, we're a team. When I was in Vietnam with my band of brothers, I was 19 going on 20. I had a platoon. I led a platoon of guys. And when we had casualties, the first emotional response from a number of these gentlemen was to point fingers. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. And that's what's happening here, okay? All I would say is the biggest enemy that you're looking at right now to getting to a better place is division amongst yourselves. If you can just step back, take your eyes off yourself for a moment, take a deep breath for a moment, emotionally, and focus on the issue, not on the people. All right? Focus on the issue. I mean, I've heard different accusations against John Reilly and maybe some other people here. That's not going to, there's no mileage to that. All right? Focus on the issue, not on people. But look at what's dividing you right now emotionally, yourselves. This is a very, very, very difficult situation for everybody. And I don't live in Oxford. I live in Oakland Township. But, you know, my prayers are with everybody here. But you have to look in the mirror and be your own best friend first. Not divide yourself with each other. That's kind of what I want to say.
Thank you for your service, sir.
I just want to first say I have nothing but respect, and I think that was a great remark from you. I also think we're dealing with our kids here. You know, we're not dealing with a war zone. It kind of feels like we are now, and this isn't, although it just happened to our community, this has been happening for a very long time in the United States, and it's escalating. This year alone, there's been, I don't want to be 120 something or 150 something numbers of school gun incidences in schools in our country alone. And one is too many. So we have to talk to each other, but we have to talk to each other about prevention, and we have to take a cold, hard look at how to prevent these things. And you know but I just wanted to say that to you. But I have nothing but respect for you. But I also wanted to mention that you had said something about social media, you know, and someone had said something about violent video games. Well, a lot of these kids have access to actual legitimate violent weapons that serve no purpose. We have a tradition in this state, and I have nothing but respect for gun owners, the vast majority of which are responsible gun owners, the vast majority. And almost all gun owners already do most of the things that common sense gun laws are already talking about. I've talked to them on the phones, thousands of them in fact. And so the reality is the vast majority of Americans, vast majority of people in this community even support common sense gun laws. That's number one. Number two, social media posts. I'm wondering that after, in light of the shooter's social media posts with the weapons saying about the beauty that he got for Christmas and all of that, if that has made you take a different viewpoint on the Lake Superior student who posted a snap with the semi-automatic weapon with a bayonet and tactical gear, and who since was not only charged, but in a court of appeals, they upheld that court's decision of terrorism. Does that make you decide that maybe this kid should have been charged, or do you still feel differently about that?
Yeah, which kid should have been charged?
You know exactly which child.
No, I wasn't sure. You're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about Lucas Gerhardt.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's not for me to decide, but the court should he have been charged. We have a bill right now to define what terrorism is.
To limit it.
To define it. And so this kid was charged with something that that it's questionable whether this is what most people would consider as terrorism. So the bill that we're looking at more closely defines what a terrorist act would be. So that's what I'm looking at is a more closely defining or more accurately defining what terrorism is. It's a pretty broad thing right now.
But you do recognize that this is something that happens in all of these school shootings. They've posted something or they've said something on the internet or they've had a social media post and everybody goes, why wasn't something done? And in this particular instance it was. He was charged with it. The Court of Appeals upheld it. And also he had issues and run-ins with campus security already. So there was clearly some pattern. But I mean, you can be represented, right?
All right, thank you for that. Okay, we got it back here. You got it all set? Okay. And was there any other? Okay, over here.
I would just like to address this young lady here in the front. You said that that boy had no record. Well, a part of this promise business is that the school keeps those records on the down low. They do not pass from a middle school, regardless of the severity of the offense. Those records do not go to the high schools.
The school is one
we had children in our district that came from a neighboring district that had attacked teachers. They came to us anonymously, and we only found out about that because of the teacher grapevine, because we're a close-knit community in South Macomb. So, quite frankly, we don't know if he had issues, quite honestly.
He didn't in the high school.
Okay, Marty.
And the reason they do that is they're keeping these statistics low. It makes the administration look good. That will be a school that you'll want to go to.
I've had
that's
4
the
years
issue. You're not being truthful about it.
I'm just saying, my child goes there. He attended his first ever visitation tonight.
I completely, and I have your heart.
And what I'm saying,
I know exactly how you
I'm
are.
sure that you're a good person, and so I'm not really arguing with you,
I
but I am
understand.
here to say that if we just got to the heart of this problem, the very first start of this problem, which was these parents, they were in love. They were in love with weapons. They showed their kids weapons. They left weapons in their house for their kids to access.
So the parenting.
That's their choice.
Okay, hold on a second here.
Child to gun range to shoot a Sig Heller, his Christmas present. And then
hold on.
he put that weapon in his backpack.
If people want to discuss this among each other afterwards, that's okay.
Okay.
I think that might be more fruitful at this point. I'm trying to hear people out and trying to answer questions that you might have with me specifically. And, okay, back here.
In regards to 5522, the supplemental budget,
yes,
I find your words ring hollow when there was supplemental budget to reimburse and treat first responders who are facing poisoning from PFAS. Your actions tell me you don't really support first responders because you voted against this.
First responders were there the other day when the shooting happened.
All right, so, yeah, that's
I know
your
that.
opinion.
Don't be disrespectful.
That's your
Don't be disrespectful and call her girl. That's
you're very
inappropriate.
disrespectful. I will.
You're very disrespectful.
Okay, hold on. We're just trying to be civil here. Come on. Okay, one more. I got a comment back here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You know, just to throw up a potential solution, a helpful maybe solution. Just a handful of years ago, the Detroit 300, led by a group of pastors and just people that lived in the neighborhoods, they walked through the neighborhoods and made these gangs stand down, and they slowed down the crime. Okay, so how does that relate to maybe Oxford or any other district? I'm retired. I'd be willing to go to the schools and just walk through the schools, say hello. more eyes on, we're throwing money at all this stuff, and maybe the money is worthwhile, and maybe it could be helpful. But there's a lot of people in the community that would be more than happy to be engaged for an hour a day or something, 2 or 3 days a week. Just walk through the school with a badge, a community member. I don't know what it would be, but if you get 30 or 40 people a week, maybe in teams of 3 or 4 people walking through the school, older folks like myself, okay, or in between, you're gonna take that temperature of whatever's going on there is gonna go down.
That's right. If we had more parents who decide
Well, they're
to
working.
stay with their children
Right.
rather than go off to work, because our problem is largely
But you have 2
economical, too.
parents working every day.
Yeah.
I'm saying
They leave their
there's
kids with a
resources.
babysitter.
There are resources in the
The
community.
educational system.
Like people like me, there are resources out there. All right. A lot of people. You don't have to be trained. Just walking through, saying hello. That could be helpful instead of spending all this money.
That comes down to like community
numbers.
solutions, which I think we could surely tap into. Does somebody have their hand up over here?
I was just gonna say, obviously there's just multifaceted issues with it all around. Is there any plan or where there's going to be some type of community engagement where this is ongoing, where we can have these conversations and that we can actually start to implement some of this as a community? Or is this just going to be another situation where we have these meetings and then nothing happens and then it's right back into another school somewhere else because we didn't as a community come together to come to some type of solutions as opposed to just throwing out what all the problems are and then we never get anywhere. So are our leaders going to help us organize some type of structure around this where we can actually start implementing solutions together?
Well, I mean, I try to organize people the best I can by having meetings here on different topics. I think that it's really up to individuals to kind of try to put time into organizing this. You can't necessarily depend on the leaders, but hopefully they can assist you. I'm sure the school district would have, lots of people who want to hear about it. I mean, mainly, I don't know if people want to look at this, but the main problem is that, or not a problem is that we have to be more involved with what's going on with government. If we want, I mean, I don't know, we got Connie Meach here, used to be on the school board. I don't know how many people generally came to the school board meetings.
Not very many.
Yeah, so we need to get more involved with all these, with what's going on in the schools, and I think there's great opportunity to do lots of creative things because we often look to government at a higher level to solve problems and we can really be more effective locally. So, yeah, right here with the mask on, yeah, go ahead.
I am not an educator. I have the utmost respect for my educators, and anyone who's been a teacher to my children or to other children that has known me will tell you that I have the utmost respect for them, and I thank them every day, including today, when I thanked my children's teachers for putting themselves in the line of fire if they needed to, because I know they would. So my problem is I've been involved after work, during work, and many other times with my school. I know my teachers' principals, I know their assistant principals, I know their teachers, I know their reading assistants. I go to PTO meetings, I participate in PTO things, and I can tell you that from the PTO meetings that I've attended and run, parents don't show up.
That's the problem.
So we need parents to show up, and we need people to participate.
That's true.
That's true.
Every time you see a PTO meeting, I don't care if you're online or you're in person, you have to continue to be there for your kids. During work, after work, anytime that you need to. That's what it is. That's the line of fire. But if I'm allowing my children to have access to a gun that wouldn't be used for deer hunting at home, because this Sig Sauer is not used for deer hunting. If I'm allowing that access unfettered, that's a problem. And I'm a gun user. I've been taught how to shoot. I don't want to take away anybody's guns, but I'm not allowing my 14-year-old to have access to one And I know who his teachers are, and I talk to his administrators. They've been to my house, I've talked to them at school. I'm involved. And when we're not involved, that's where the problems are.
Okay, excellent, thank you for that comment. In front of you, John?
Yeah, so addressing the issue of people that feel they can make a difference, I think that's largely what our problem is that people don't show up to these meetings because they don't know that they can make a difference. And so my question contends, how do we get these people, to solve a problem here, how do we get these people to understand you can make a difference? That's, I guess that's where it starts.
A lot of people don't know what to do.
I would just say, history has revealed that a single person can do unbelievable things that nobody expected. And so we know that the capability of an individual is great. And we all have potential and use the gifts that God's given us. It's a matter of are we going to use them or not. Yeah, back here.
Me?
Jake?
I guess I'm hearing some interesting things. One of the issues is on funding, obviously, and being in the Brandon School District, we recently voted $25 million for the school. Now, in terms of resources, we've got money available. At the county, I think their budget went from $1 billion a year. They got an extra $250 million because of the COVID stuff. So we've got the resources. I think you're right. I think it is the engagement. I think it takes each of us to begin to attend some of these meetings and ask some of these tough questions locally. I think the state can do some things that represent Reilly, but I think most of it is really on us.
It's local level.
We need to get together and drive some of this
How
stuff.
do we pull some of these people out of their houses, though? And people that don't understand that they can make a difference. That's what I'm.
I can tell you that if you attend and you talk to other people, they show up. It's until you start pulling other people in. I've pulled in lots of people, but it's not enough.
We've had some social media, but either that gets shut down or somebody joins the group and then the group separates.
Frankly, sometimes the politicians don't listen. I've been to some of these county meetings that were spoken of earlier. 500 people came, and they still don't listen.
They don't know.
So some of them, they don't really get the engagement.
Okay, we got somebody over here who got a comment.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. I guess I had a question for you. Talk about funding. Talk about COVID dollars. COVID dollars are streaming into our districts right now. How can you help us remove the barriers and how that money can be spent?
Well, it's kind of a complicated
It's
question,
this whole
because I
thing
have
is-
to know what laws associated with those
You
dollars.
can only spend COVID dollars in a certain way pertaining to
Whatever the contract was.
implementing the restorative education that students have missed over the period of time. Some districts, they weren't in school for a year, 18 months. Oxford's been in school the whole time. We still have a gap. Those gaps in other districts may be larger, but you can only spend the federal dollars in a certain way. We need help from our state, our representatives, our leadership in our state to go to the federal government and say, we understand there's got to be some parameters here set. You just can't use to build a building.
Right.
Okay, we understand that. But right now, I think there's that money, we have to maybe look at it, spending on mental illness, because right now, Tuesday, I didn't think I had a pretty mentally strong guy.
Yeah.
We got teachers, we have administrators that were running towards the situation. Walked out with blood up to their elbows. Mentally strong people, they're going to have issues. Children have issues for no other reason that they were in that building. And we can't spend that money unless we're told it fits in that parameter. We have to be able to say, I understand the money shouldn't be used to build buildings and build football stadiums and all those great things that we'd love to have. We got kids that are afraid to come back into our building. We got administrators. You think we got a problem now with getting teachers? Good luck.
Yes, exactly.
Because people aren't going to come back to teach. They're terrified. And it's, you said it the best. Okay? You said it the best. We have to stop talking about, and no, I'm not trying to disrespect your point because the thing's valid. But we have to say, well, this administration passed this, so it's wrong. That administration passed that, so it's wrong. Can't attack parties. We have to attack problems. And until we get to that point as a community, we're in big trouble. Because it's going to continue to happen.
He's exactly right about the strings on the federal money. They can only be used for certain purposes and they have to apply for what it's going to be used for. If all of us called Alyssa Slotkin's office tomorrow and demanded that stuff be changed, that's where our voice would be heard at the federal level.
Don't attack her.
No, I'm not saying that.
I know, but we tend to feel a certain kind of way, so we attack somebody because they have a D at the end of their name, or they have an R at the end of the name, but at the end of the day, we're human beings.
I'm talking about the strings attached.
Right,
to
and
money.
I get it, but people are going to call and they're going to throw things at her like, well,
emotional.
You can't do that.
The reason those strings are all attached, though, is to prevent all the corruption.
Absolutely.
From somebody hiring their cousin to do this or that or something else. So it's a catch-22 with all of this. The whole situation is, you know, where does this start? It started at home with poor parenting, you know, and it went through, and there's a whole series of things, much like many of the other ones that have occurred across the country. This is an inherent problem because people, as they've moved into the workforce, there's not parents at home anymore. There's a lot less. There's video. There's this. There's that. The internet. These kids are getting lost, you know. And I said something about prescription drugs, you know, with people talking about locking things up and separating them away from children. I know for a fact that at St. Joseph's Church, they do about 10 funerals a year for the same kids from suicides from their parents' medicine cabinet, you know. And it's a really difficult thing to deal with. This gentleman here, with different eras, but as a combat veteran, all the therapy in the world, and I'm not trying to discourage anybody, it never goes away when you lose somebody. It just doesn't, you know? And I've dealt with it ever since, you know, it happened the very first time. It doesn't get any better the second time. You know, you see a car accident on the street, it all comes back. It's just the way that it is. And we didn't choose this for any of our kids. But all we can do is help them now to get through this. And it's going to be a rough road for everybody. And like he said before, you can't get mad at each other. We just have to work together to help these kids and the administrators and the people that had to deal with this. Everybody that was there became a combat veteran. And they're going to have to work their way through it the best they can.
Okay, Mr. Rowell, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I work all the time. I'm only 73 and I'm still working. Cross bases, attics, wherever. I'm sick and tired of hearing teachers, they're overworked, they're underpaid, understaffed. It's always somebody else's fault. But when the clique of teachers get together and the bosses in charge of them fail to bring security to these places, teachers responded to this situation way before it happened. The result of it brought to us because the teachers are complaining that they don't have enough support, they don't have this, the parents don't show up for the kids' PTA meetings and stuff. If we were in trouble at school, the last place we wanted that message to go to is home because you were a distraction to the class, nobody could learn. And that coming forward, our school system has dropped the ball on us immensely. Our kids come out of school not reading, writing, no cursor. I mean, the kids are sitting beside each other. They're not talking, they're texting each other. And then I hear the teachers can't restrict the cell phones to come into the class or whatever else they have. There's no consequences for any bad behavior. And this administrative of the rah-rah Oxford High band guy that made it a political issue, I am really, really taken back by you. Myself dealt with many deaths There's a guy, Terry Kelly, nobody knows here. I was in the 6th grade. Terry Kelly played with a lantern in a garage. It blew up. He died months later. Nobody misses him. I miss him every day. This guy talked of combat. Him, I have 5 personal good friends. Mel MacArthur was weeks coming home to marry his high school sweetheart, Deanna Berg. He died violently. Many others died violently. Tired of hearing that they're passing the buck. Nothing. The first responders are the people there. We get 50,000 responders after the fact. It happens at the spark of people attacking other people. And then when I hear the bloviating coming out of our educators, we can't do this, our hands are tied. They don't hold our school administrating Oakland Township schools accountable for the disrespect in our schools that have come forward, and the disrespect for people in general. I'm tired of it.
All right. Okay, so we're going to take these 3 last people over here. Start with this woman over here.
I, again, am not from this area. I'm from Pennsylvania, or I was. I currently live in Oxford. I take exception to the fact that the teachers aren't doing enough. 2 teachers in this instance did bring the problem to the administration, and administration couldn't do anything with it.
And they wouldn't do nothing about it.
But it's not because, and I liked your idea, it would be great to go into the schools, but you know who you got in the schools right now? You've got a whole bunch of teachers that spend 8 hours, 6 hours a day with these kids. They know who needs help.
That's right.
And I had been a teacher. I had kids coming into my classroom crying because their boyfriend broke up or their girlfriend didn't, I was there for them. I know which kids were having problems. But if I took it to the guidance counselor and they couldn't help me, and you're right, it's the parents. We should have the parents involved. But you know what? Parents, the kids that needed it the most, parents didn't show up. So we're all preaching to the choir here, guys. Collectively, even a little differently, we're preaching to the choir. You can't legislate a parent coming in. But that's where it's needed. It's not the games. It has to do with the family. You have to institute a love somewhere along the line. It's only in schools. So if we don't have the support of the community as a teacher, because we do a lot for your kids. And
thank you.
You can't really ignore the parental responsibility in all of this. I'll never forget Columbine. Everybody was talking about guns in the schools and whatever, but everybody neglected one very important thing. Not one single reporter ever put a microphone right in the face of the parents of Devin Klebold and asked them a simple question. What were you and your husband doing when your son and his friend were using your family garage as a bomb factory, making fragmentation grenades right in your backyard? There was an incident in St. Clair Shores several years ago where there were complaints about this one kid in this neighborhood who was committing a lot of B&Es, breaking and enterings, and he was stealing. He says, we have problems with this kid. Well, St. Clair Shores police went there and knocked on the door. They says, where's your son? He's not home right now. Could we see his room? Because we're suspecting that something's going on. He says, well, his room is closed. He says, why is his room closed? Well, it's his private space. Well, they got into the room, they jimmied it open, and his bedroom was a warehouse of stolen property that this kid was going out there. So we don't, that was his private space. We let him have his private space. So this kid was committing robberies, and they didn't even know. So you can't ignore the basic unit of government is the family. And there has to be a better structure for their families in terms of parental responsibility to avoid these tragedies, because in all too many circumstances, you can find out what were you doing when this was happening. Oh, we didn't know. Johnny didn't know this. He was a good boy, whatever it might be. But he's building bombs in your garage, right?
Did you have a question there?
Yeah.
So let's get back to the issue at hand. My issue is, I agree, I've said, parents need to be responsible. We all need to know what our kids are doing. I know what my kids are doing, whether they're playing violent video games or the piano, I know what they're doing. I'm aware. At any time I can walk into their room. So when we hold the parents accountable, that does not mean we go into their house and find out if they have guns. That means we do things like putting these parents in jail after, as a deterrent for the parents that aren't paying attention to their children. That we hold them accountable. And I'm asking you as a legislator to always support that, and to support that our children do not have access, unfettered access to guns. And I'm asking you that when we talk about respect, we talk about not only respect for our teachers and our administrators, our legal and our law, our legislators, but also for each other. Calling each other boy and girl and misrepresenting what the rest of us have chosen doesn't help either. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I care that you answer my questions, and that when you vote and I'm mad about it or upset, that we can discuss. So when I get answers from you that are, I'll answer you later, I'll call you later, that's very upsetting to me. And it's been going on for too long. And I understand we'll discuss it further in the future. But it can't happen anymore. We need answers. And if the money for COVID isn't the answer, then we need to vote to have money for mental health and for our children separately. We need the laws and the rules and the funding to take care of our children. Because one day we all hope they'll take care of us.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that comment. And this concludes this. I will come back again next month and have office hours again. You can come back. It's good to see people actually here. I'm devastated by the situation, but I thank you for coming tonight. You do feel free if you want to talk to other people for probably 10 minutes, and then we've got to close up this building.